You are so beautiful. Can you look in the mirror and tell yourself that? When you look in the mirror, is that what you see? When you look at those around you, is that what you see? Because we know in spiritual teaching, there's the idea that we are made in the image and likeness of our source, which is perfect love, perfect light, perfect beauty. But no doubt, in the human psyche and the human condition, it doesn't take long for that to be challenged. It doesn't take long to see images of self or other that don't make us feel beautiful or don't tell someone else they are beautiful. And when we say beautiful and when we say self, this other and self, who are we talking about? What kind of beauty? What kind of image? Is it the clothes we wear? Is it the things we have? Is it how we look? Where is our value in self? And are we living from that place of knowing that we are made in the image and likeness of pure light? I had an experience just the other day where I was pulling out of a little stoplight, and I thought I had plenty of room to pull out. The person in front of me clearly didn't think that, and zoomed around me after, we were actually going the speed limit, and then zoomed around me, and continued to look back in the rearview mirror until we got to a stoplight. And so I was just sitting there in the car, and the I was going to say gentleman, but I think that would be too gracious. But let's just say it for blessing's sake. The gentleman had quite a few choice words, which would not be aired on television. And I thought to myself, what kind of pain must someone be in? Because, the initial reaction is how horrific that, regardless of anything that happens, how that someone would use those words. And then I thought, what is that inside? What must be going on inside, right? Something certainly where there is a deep message that we are not beautiful, regardless of how we show up, regardless of what things look like. And in the human condition, can we not come from a place within ourselves or with each other that is quite ugly, that is quite unsightly? Yet we hold to these outer pictures, we hold to these outer ideals when we're looking at self. I have a minister friend who a while ago posted this picture on Facebook, and I thought, what in the world is she doing? And it was a selfie, and it was from right when she woke up on a Sunday morning, bedhead and all, she didn't even do anything. And it was this whole Sunday where they had everyone post pictures in their authentic, raw states. This is just what it's really like. This is what I am. This is who I am. This is it. To work with the idea that even in our pure authenticity, even without any image protection, we are beautiful. Can we see through the shadows and see through the illusions to that truth? We spend a lot of time in our culture holding up false idols, holding up false ideas and images of beauty and of self and of relationship. We live in a world where you can Photoshop anything, where you can add filters, where you can clip, paste, cut, where you can essentially edit your life and then put it out there. I know when I was in college, there were a lot of studies on self-image, and what the media does to create images of men, of women, of human beings that don't serve us. If anyone's heard of Barbie, I don't know what her size is right now. I think it's changed. But a completely unattainable image of what a woman is. A completely unattainable. I mean, I think they found out that it wasn't even physically possible to look like Barbie. Yet we give children these dolls and have them play with them and have them grow up with them and dress them up as if they are the image of what we are to be. And then we wonder why the World Health Organization says that by 2020, depression is going to become the major and main cause of disability. In fact, I was doing a little searching, and it looks like they're already saying that it is. The pressing down of the spirit. Depression. The pressing down of the spirit. It's so subtle, like we know in media, like we know in the mainstream when we see these images now all over. We know that that's not exactly reality, don't we? I mean, if you've read a book, you probably get it, that what you see out there isn't something necessarily to attain, right? That it's been photoshopped, it's been cut, and it's not worth your time to invest in trying to get there. But there's a new phenomenon happening. What was put out by the media is now available on the web. And sometimes we're doing it to each other. Did you know that there's apps that you can filter and you can take away every blemish? You could take away anything that looks like a problem. They say that the records in our mind come from childhood. Any sort of issue that brings up a feeling of lack of worth, of problem, of limitation, comes from that beginning program at the first ages of our lives, right? And then after that, the parent figure or the society, the culture, the family figure that was a part of that environment that created it is no longer there, but we still continue doing it to ourselves after they're gone. It's a record in the mind. There's something called a flea circus. This is animal cruelty, so cancel this out. But there's something called a flea circus, that if you take fleas and you put a glass lid over the top, they will jump up and they will hit the top of the glass lid. And they'll jump up and they'll hit it and they'll hit it and they'll hit it, and they'll learn only to jump so high. And then you can take the lid off. And after that, you can have a flea circus, because they'll never go beyond where that glass ceiling was. It's widely known that the media produces images of human existence, human life that are not attainable, and that in fact lead us into paths of suffering, lead us into places of feeling lack or lack of wholeness. But what is not as widely known is that when we share images that are false and inauthentic of ourselves, when we promote a self that is not based in reality, we are doing it again, friends, to ourselves and to each other. How many of you have seen or heard stories about marriage, about divorce, about aging, about grief, about life, that paint a picture that you don't fit in? That paint a picture that leads you to always feeling like you're not enough. It's a pandemic today. Feeling not quite whole. Feeling like we're not enough. There's a show I like to watch called Grace and Frankie, or Frankie and Grace, whichever one it is. And Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin are in this show. And you know, it's widely known that actresses, particularly actresses, as they get older, have fewer and fewer roles. Because women are so objectified in our culture that if they're not fitting the standard image, they're not really seen as much. And the character roles with depth can be few and far between. So she created this series, and one of the episodes had to do with a bit of this self-image. So they created a product that's out there on the market, and they were doing a campaign to sell this product. This could get tricky. And the nutshell is that they got to a place where they were going to go to a big company that was going to get their image out there. And they're two women in their seasoned years. And they were trying to show up authentically, to empower people, to empower women. And as they were trying to show up authentically, they got all of the shots that they're supposed to use for this marketing campaign. And there they were, photoshopped, trimmed, clipped, looking like $1 million. And they looked at it and knew it would sell, but they had a moment. A moment where consciousness and conscience took over. And they said, no, we can't go that way. That will only lead people to feel inadequate. That will only lead people to feel like not enough. That will only lead people to compare themselves to an ideal image that doesn't exist, because that's not us. That's not us. Jane Fonda said that the media creates consciousness. The media creates consciousness. And she talked about that idea being a reason why we need to be in there creating it. And the beauty is, friends, today we are. Today we are all connected in a way we have never been connected before. In a day and age where generations couldn't even have dreamt that we could have the type of one-on-one, the type of personal communication, that we could get our story across, that we could reach each other in our homes, on our phones, everywhere we are. To do what? To share stories and images with each other that lead to false ideas and feelings of insecurity, or to spread light, to shine light, to show what we really are, to show and to be boldly authentic, so that we can embrace all of our being, so that we can embrace all of who we are, and recognize that there is never a need for comparison, there is only a need for compassion, for inspiration and support. That in fact, what we need no more of are photoshopped ideas of what this life is about, and what we need more of are true stories about overcoming, about relationship, about how to do life in an authentic, raw, and beautiful way that empowers and that makes people feel at home within their being. Rather than feel alienated or anxious or insecure. Jean Kilbourne, who is a filmmaker and an author, she said a lot of advertising is based upon making people feel anxious and insecure. The idea of advertising is to create an image that is somewhere distant from where you are, so that you can have a craving or an urge or a desire to get there. Friends, the only craving, urge, or desire we need to have to get somewhere is to a state of mindfulness, a state of awareness, a state of awakened consciousness that in unity we call the Christ consciousness. And that's the urge within our hearts, within our being. Any other urge, any other anxiety, any other anxiousness to be something else is a futile journey. Because it's like a dangling carrot, it's like a flea circus. It will always be out there. It'll always be one procedure, one step, one purchase away. But the truth is the beauty of our being, is truly based in the wholeness that we are. So we're living in a new era. And it's our choice whether or not we are going to promote ideals that lead to idolatry or whether we are going to contribute to creating consciousness that heals, consciousness that uplifts, consciousness that inspires. So I invite us to become more mindful. When we tell our stories, when we post our pictures, when we communicate ourselves to the world, to each other, and to the self. Are we walking around promoting false images of ourselves, our relationships? Are we trying to look happier than we are, more perfect than we could really be, more together, more anything, more everything? I one time had someone post something on Facebook, and I was right there, that they didn't say to me. It was a sweetness, a sweet thing, posted on Facebook that they didn't actually say to me, right there in the room. And I said, take that off. You say that to me first. Take that off there. You don't go telling the world I'm beautiful if you didn't tell me. I'm not going to be sitting here crying and everyone's going, look how much you love her. It's so beautiful. Are we willing to get real? Because when we get real with ourselves, there is a mighty healing. When we recognize that who we are and all of our rawness, all of our beauty, all of our bedhead, all of it. Once we recognize that that is truly beautiful, we will liberate ourselves. And when we liberate ourselves, we liberate each other. I have a girlfriend that just did the walk through cancer, and she's completed that walk. But when I was in one of her chemo treatments with her, each time she wanted to take a picture, so we did a little selfie shot. And as we were looking at it, we were looking at how we're getting older, and and she said, look at my crow's feet. Can you do anything about that? And we were laughing because people had just shown us these little apps where you can take a little eraser and go. So she's sitting there in bed, and I'm going, I'll do anything you want. Let me just get that eraser. And we're laughing, showing each other the pictures. And then we said something about posting it. And then I was like, for God's sake, we can't post this on Facebook. You're in chemo. What would that tell other people that are going through chemo? Hello, I'm going through chemo. But what we could do is post it and say, thanks to that airbrush app, chemo doesn't look that bad. But can we be mindful of the ego's need, the ego's desire to make everything perfect on the outside, and to recognize that there is a possibility that through your own need for approval, through our own lack of self-esteem sometimes, through our own desire sometimes to feel or seem more than we feel like in a moment, we may inadvertently contribute to a detrimental fall in consciousness for our brothers and sisters, a fall into an unattainable reality that others use to harm themselves. And I'm not saying this to make us feel guilty or to change us. We are what we are. And these images we see are not compulsory. We do not have to consume them. But when we don't realize and recognize that they're an illusion, and we think that is the truth of our being, we can harm ourselves and harm each other. So it's not really about whether we edit the photos and the snapshots of our lives. It's not as much about that as it is about what we are believing and making things mean. Are we believing the thoughts in our minds about ourselves and others? Or do we truly recognize that comparison is futile? That validation from any external source is futile? The ego will always try to attach to ideals and perfections and false idols. The ego will always try to get caught up in the illusion. Jack Kornfield says that cascades of unskillful thoughts will tempt us with their stories. Cascades of unskillful thoughts will tempt us with their stories. He refers to that saying, we can actually see that these thoughts do not have our well-being in mind. They are like a bad friend or an approaching mugger. And we can recognize their harmful potential immediately and turn in another direction. Thought can be our friend. Are we ready to engage in a world and in a mind that we co-create? One that's based on radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. Where we can accept ourselves and be secure in ourselves just as we are, so that nothing in the external, whether they're false images, whether they're fun, whether they're holy moments, we can see beyond our roles, beyond our identities, beyond our bodies, and find ourselves. Louise Hay was a pioneer and is a pioneer of this work. A tool is doing mirror work. Has anyone done mirror work? Where you hold up a mirror and you speak to yourself, you speak through the insecurities to the self. When we can do that work, we find an inner beauty and a wholeness that goes beyond the pictures and the images. Can we truly see ourselves? Can we feel the observer within us that is seeing us? Eric Butterworth says, the mystic is one who really believes that he lives, moves, and has his being in God. The mystic is one who really believes that he lives, moves, and has his being in God. We are here to be real. There is more than enough space for our authenticity, and in fact, I believe it is us in all of our imperfections and all of our authenticity and all of our rawness. It is us bringing that to the picture, bringing that to the collective, bringing that to the self that liberates and allows us to feel our wholeness in a way that will go beyond our wildest imaginings of what it feels like to be real and to be human and to also be spiritually perfect. So what are the true stories? We need to hear them. What are the true pictures? We need to see them. Because when we see the true pictures and the true stories, then we have true ideas of what we can attain and what we can become. That's the only problem with deities. Religion wants to make them unattainable. Religion wants to create stories around them that make them so far-fetched that they're just like the images in the media. They're for someone else. They're Barbie-sized. Can we take those images off the shelf and realize they're here for us as guideposts? They're here for us because it is our divine birthright. We are unique, unrepeatable expressions of light, love, God. We're here to know it. We're here to be it. Pope Francis said, "Quite a few years of my life have strengthened my conviction that each and everyone's existence is deeply tied to that of others. Life is not merely passing by. Life is about interactions." The Buddha said, whatever a person frequently thinks and reflects on, that will become the inclination of their mind. So, friends, we are creating the collective consciousness. What is our contribution? Namaste.